Now, I don't really care for possession or exorcism horror. Those two very specific subgenres aren't necessarily reliant on one another, but more often than not they do fall within the same films and feature similar tropes because, for an exorcism to be present, a possession of some form must have taken place. I look at films like The Exorcist, a true work of art and a staple of horror, and something that everyone who studied this genre has probably had to put under the microscope at some stage, and I don't really feel anything. There's just something about these types of movies that I can't get into, and 9 times out of 10 I find myself more disappointed than anything else. I say this because it's relevant, and it's relevant because I recently sat down to watch this year's Talk to Me, a movie that is very heavily reliant on the possession subgenre, and I liked it. Something about this movie in a corner of horror that I very rarely visit grabbed me and had me thoroughly gripped from start to finish, and it's something I'd like to try and explore today. Before we go any further, just a little reminder to please leave a like and subscribe if you go on to enjoy this video, and with that out of the way, let's dive into things. The movie begins at a house party in Adelaide, Australia. There, Cole searches for his brother Duckett and eventually finds him locked away in a bedroom. He gets through the door and tries to get his brother home, getting a stab in the shoulder as a thank you because, from experience, that's just how brothers are. This shock and cold open ends with a self-inflicted knife wound to the face as we flash forward sometime later to meet our 17-year-old protagonist Mia, who is struggling because this is the 2nd anniversary of her mother Ria's death. On top of this, she's also battling with a broken and distant relationship with her father Max. The movie instantly does a really good job of setting Mia up as this emotionally troubled character with a lot of baggage, and it doesn't really force it in your face either, choosing to instead be a little more subtle about things. One night when she's driving her friend's brother Riley home, Mia comes across a fatally injured kangaroo, and despite knowing it's the right thing to do, cannot bring herself to mercy kill it. We soon meet Jade, the older sister of Riley and also Mia's best friend. We learn in a couple of scenes here that Mia seems a lot closer with Jade's mum than her own father, which speaks a lot to the time she's probably spending away from home. Pretty soon, Mia and Jade, followed by Riley in a classic bout of sibling blackmail, all sneak out of the house to go to a small party, hosted by Haley and Joss, with the main attraction being a severed and embalmed hand, with the origins of this mysterious object being unknown to anyone present. The rules of this party game are sinister, simple to grasp, and are as follows. You sit down in a chair, you hold the hand's hand, you say, "Talk to me." Wow, those rules were actually a lot easier than last month's. All of this allows you the chance to communicate with the dead person's spirit, which is something that is shown to us in an incredibly well executed jump scare. I mean, this thing actually got me. The next step of the game is to say, "I let you in," and that, it pretty much does what it says in the tin. The catch here is that there's a 90-second time limit, with the consequences of breaking that being that the spirits will want to stay on a more permanent basis. You basically cancel out the possession by blowing out the candle that's been lit and breaking the bond between the hand and the person. Pretty simple rules, and I can guarantee you that no one's going to break those. It's clear from this scene that Mia isn't really in the best of places with everything in her life right now. A lot of people at the party see her as more of a burden than a girl with problems, which more than likely leaves her feeling isolated and desperate to be seen more positively, and this is probably why Mia ends up volunteering herself for the first possession of the night, probably seeing this as the only way to be more likeable towards the others. The first possession scene is fantastic, and I would honestly say this is some of the best suspense I've seen in a movie all year. The spirit that possesses Mia seems to show an odd amount of focus on Riley, and upon the end of the 90 seconds, Joss and Haley grapple with the supernatural hold that the hand has on Mia, only able to break the connection a few seconds after the time limit. Brushing off concern from a few concerned parties, Mia is ecstatic over the feeling that the hand brought, taking no notice of the potential repercussions of her going past her time limit. Mia then follows this up by joining Joss, Haley, Jade and Jade's boyfriend, as well as Riley being there as well, at Jade's house the next night with the hand also present. Riley shows an interest in taking part, which Jade, being the level-headed person she is, immediately shoots down, and this is followed by this insanely short possession montage that I found out was actually filmed in less than an hour, which I thought was really impressive. Jade eventually leaves the room and Riley begins to target Mia, guilt-tripping her into allowing him to take part. Again, more than likely because she's trying to be seen as more likeable, Mia agrees to this, however with the condition that Riley's time limit is 50 seconds as opposed to the usual 90. Under the watchful eye of Mia, Riley takes his turn and seems to be taken over by the spirit of Mia's mum. She tries to reconcile with Mia, who is completely floored by this, by the way, and desperate for another moment with her mother, which leads to her letting Riley drift past his 50 seconds and then eventually past the 90 seconds also. This then results in one of the most uncomfortable watches in the movie as Riley surpasses his limit, allowing the spirits full entry as they begin to force him into a brutal attempt to take his own life. Smashing his face against tables, cupboards and the window, as well as this awesome visceral shot of him trying to pull out his own eye. Holy shit, they really didn't pull any punches here, did they? What impresses me most about this is that it's practical, and that's something that can be said for most of this movie. There is actually very little CGI present here, and that goes a long way in keeping the immersion high. In an interview with Sci-Fi Now, when talking about the use of contact lenses to achieve the possessed look, the directors discussed the film's use of practical effects and also mentioned that they shot practical as much as they could, and in the context of the contact lenses, they would use the briefest amount of CG to blend practical elements in without much fuss. Back to the movie, Riley somehow survives this, being rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Mia at this point is now being haunted by the visions of her mother and also being blamed for Riley's injuries as she's immediately shunned by both Jade and Jade's mother, Sue. This is likely a really tough pill for Mia to swallow because we've already seen that Mia is more close with this family than she is with her own. Having secretly taken the hand from Jade's house, Mia offers Daniel a place to stay for the night, and while sharing a bed, she watches a spirit crawl from the corner of the room, approaching Daniel and beginning to indulge in what it likes to call fun. Not all is as it seems though. David wakes up and sees that it's actually Mia indulging herself and is understandably creeped out, rushing from the house, seeing this as a massive mistake as Mia was clearly totally sorry. Mia begins repeatedly using the hand to contact her mother, who insists that her death was purely accidental and claims that Riley needs Mia's help. He, at this point, is still possessed and attempting suicide every time he returns to consciousness, and it's around this point that Mia leaves the connection open, beginning to see her mother without the hand, which causes her to further spiral and lose her grip on reality as she knows it. Filled with a newfound determination to put things right, Mia gathers her friends to track down Cole, the brother who was stabbed in the cold open of the film. When they do, he explains to them that the living body naturally expels any spirits, and Mia, fearing that Riley may not have time, attempts to contact him through the hand while sitting by his side, but instead is shown visions of Riley being tortured by the spirits in limbo. Returning home without much hope, Mia is met by her dad, who shares the note that Rhea had left before her passing. This is a scene that's acted with a lot of sincerity, featuring a remorseful father who feels he should have done more but tried to protect his daughter from the truth, and his lost daughter who is currently going through so much more trauma because of other things happening in her life. Her mother's spirit has different plans, however, telling Mia that Max is lying to her. This leads into some really great tension as Max begins to burst into her room, with us also being shown that the real Max is still down the stairs, which means obviously that this intruder isn't real. She screams as she's attacked, and obviously Max's first instinct is to rush to his daughter's aid. Mia begins to struggle with her demonic attacker and grabs the first weapon that she can get her hands on, which happens to be a pair of scissors that lies nearby. Simultaneously, Max enters the room and sees Mia struggling with absolutely nothing, with her own hands wrapped around her throat. Again, as a concerned father would, he rushes over and kneels by her side trying to assist her, unknowingly putting himself in the same line of fire that his demonic counterpart is currently in as Mia drills the scissor blade deep into his neck. I absolutely adore this scene. It's not suspenseful in the way that you don't know where things are going. I had a pretty solid idea early on that this is how things were going to escalate, but the way that it builds itself through the use of sound, framing, and the increasingly urgent performances just works really well, and it blends into this great moment. The movie is stacked to high heavens with stuff like this, and it's that really sets it a foot above the rest. Mia is told that Riley needs to die in order to be set free from his possession, and after seeing the injured kangaroo she failed to mercy kill in a hallucination, Mia returns to the hospital. She kidnaps him in a wheelchair, somehow getting him past all the staff, and as Jade returns from her diversion that was set by Mia, she sees her pushing out Riley towards the highway. Mia's mother tries to convince her to push Riley into the oncoming traffic, but when she tells Mia that the spirits will have him forever, Mia realises the painful truth and that her mother has actually been the same malevolent spirit from her initial possession, having been manipulating her all along. Unable to face what she was about to do, Mia steps away from the wheelchair. The next few seconds are a little odd, and I'm not quite sure what transpires as it happens off camera, but essentially we cut to the point of view within a passing vehicle as Mia's body is thrown into the windshield, leaving her badly injured on the road. She wakes up later in a time jump that isn't time defined but also doesn't need that, and gets up, noticing that Riley has now fully recovered, talking with Jade and Sue. As she tries to grab their attention, however, she quickly realises that no one is responding to her, and also notes that she doesn't have a reflection in any of the surfaces around her. She eventually becomes engulfed in complete darkness, blindly stumbling through the silence when she sees a hand extended outwards over a candle in the distance. We all know what's coming here, but that doesn't stop the execution from being any less awesome as Mia takes the hand being pulled forward suddenly into a house party, where a partygoer holding her hand takes a second to process her appearance before speaking the same line that started all of her trouble in this movie.
I'll let you in.
One of the most interesting things about this movie comes in my eyes from the people behind the camera. Talk to Me was directed by Michael and Danny Philippou, and for those of you unaware of those names, you might instead know them as their YouTube alias, because these are the brothers behind the Raka Raka channel. Now, I'll admit, I still didn't initially know them by that name, however, I did recognise some of the stuff they've done, stuff that I remember seeing on the platform a good few years ago now. It feels really odd that yet again we have these people transitioning from making comedy content into making horror content. It almost highlights that while these genres are very different in terms of execution, they almost seem to be on similar roads. The most notable figure in recent years to make this jump was obviously Jordan Peele, and if he needs any introduction, I just think you need to get out more. Talk to Me is the directorial debut of the brothers, and it's more than a solid effort, breathing new life into a very stale and in my eyes uninteresting corner of horror. Reports have claimed that they did turn down the chance to direct an unknown film in the DCEU, choosing instead to run with this movie as their first project, which I think was the good decision. This movie is spearheaded by a powerhouse performance from Sophie Wilde in what's actually her first leading role. She's the emotional epicenter of the movie's plot, and it's her endured trauma that carries the most weight. I was blown away here, not only by her, but by the cast as a whole. Across this entire film, the acting is consistently top notch, and it really does help sell things when it gets serious. And so with that, I find myself back at my initial question. If I don't typically like possession movies, what did Talk to Me do so different that sets it away from everything else? I think the honest answer is that it's not the possession that makes this movie, it's the characters and the lives and the relationships they share around it. Talk to Me is a film that values the characters and its writing first. Possession is a primary cog in the gears that make this film flow. It's a driving force to further elevate and bring attention to the trauma, putting it on a platform where it can continue to be a corrosive element of Mia's life, and I didn't ever feel like I was really watching a possession film during all of that. The subgenre at times almost doesn't take priority over characters, and it's a difference here that I really appreciated. It's a movie that feels as though the plot exists for the characters rather than being the other way around. Trauma is undeniably just as important an antagonist in this movie as the demonic entities within the hand, and I appreciate that it's the first of those two that gets a deeper, more nuanced focus. There's also a surprising amount to be unpacked behind the more obvious aspects of the film, or maybe they're not surprises and I just didn't pick them up the first time, because that's also been known to happen. Now, it may never be explicitly stated in the film, but it's heavily theorised and implied throughout that the same ghost haunting Mia throughout, obviously her mother, is actually the same ghost from her initial possession, the waterlogged woman. Reasoning for this is that obviously her possession does run past the 90 seconds, and as we know, the demons do want to stay and tend to cling on past that. Several times from this point in the movie where Rhea is present, water tends to be present in the soundtrack as well, and in her final few appearances her look begins to change as well, taking on more of a waterlogged and drowned look. There is an insurmountable level of quality to this film, and I will forever be impressed that this was created by two first-time directors with YouTube as a background. It was so successful that a sequel has already been greenlit, and I personally could not be happier to hear that. This has all the potential to tell a larger story without the danger of becoming stale, which is yet another pitfall that these films typically tend to fall into. It was really easy for me to be pulled into the world of this film. It was easier for me to feel empathy for these characters, for Mia and her friends, and that just really isn't possible if the writing and the narrative isn't structured in a way that makes me want to care. If the story doesn't feel believable within the world being shown to me, then why should I show belief in it? I adore this as a movie because of how it flows. I adore it as a character exploration because we get to see the slow, unsteady degradation within Mia as she gives in to her grief, and then the repeated attempts and desperation that she endures trying to repair what she's done. In truth, Mia is just a broken soul, entangled in a battle with malevolent ones, and it's a battle that ultimately proves too much for her, and that adds another small tragic element to the ending of this movie, contributing to just how impactful it really is. I'm not gonna lie guys, I loved Talk to Me. It's a fantastic movie with a phenomenal cast and a surprising amount of nuance for a film that desires fear more than anything else. This thing wants to scare you, and let me tell you, it nails the horror side of things. Often this genre can go into odd tangents. You have stuff like campy horror, grindhouse horror, shock horror, even elevated horror, as much as I hate the term. But this right here is just horror in its purest, most unfiltered form. Talk to Me didn't terrify me like some films do. It didn't disturb me like other films have. But what it did do is supply a thrilling, genuine horror experience from start to finish. And I will always applaud this movie for that. It's hopeless, it's miserable, it's bleak, and strangely, that's everything I want this genre to be sometimes. Talk to Me is a fired up display of craftsmanship with something to prove, and it proved it all and then some, undoubtedly going down as one of 2023's best movies. And that is Talk to Me, a film that despite the subgenre it places itself within, I thoroughly enjoyed. Feel free to get into the comments below and let me know what you thought of the film, as well as this video. I am always trying to improve, obviously, so your feedback is greatly appreciated. You know, I am a content creator that is growing with each video, and so your words do help greatly in improving all of this. That is it for the year. Media 13 is done. We have done some good things. I will be uploading a smaller thing later on in the month. And spoiler alert, next time you see me in an actual video format, not counting the little end of year thing, this is going to be different. Everything here is changing. The sound is going to be a lot better, hopefully, because I understand that is becoming a bit of an issue. I am working on it, I promise. Yeah, for the last time you're seeing... Ow, my ankle. Yeah, for the last time you were seeing these white walls, never again. They're going to be a brand new colour. It's not pink because it wouldn't have looked good. I did think about it heavily. But yeah, feel free to let me know anything you'd like me to cover next year. And until then, I've been Media 13, and I'll see you around.